Dialectical behavior therapy was created in the 1980s by Marsha Linehan in Seattle, Washington.
Today, DBT is taught all over the world.
We're two therapists who believe everyone can benefit from DBT skills.
I'm Kate.
I'm Michelle.
And this is DBT and Me. Hello. And I always want to say good morning or good afternoon or something, but then I
break
remember
yourself
that
of it.
somebody could be listening to this at 2 in the morning. I don't know. No shame. I don't know what your schedule is. Anyway, welcome.
Hello.
And this week we are doing part 2 of our Emotions 101. Last week we were talking about what are those darn emotion things anyway.
Yep.
And hopefully, as I recall, we went on a bit.
Oh, yeah. I think it was our longest episode yet. Pretty confident in that.
And that was part 1. We're a bit talkative on this subject.
We'll see if part 2 is shorter, but we definitely do not make any guarantees.
Yeah, but this episode, we're more or less going to be covering, what do they do for us? Why do we have them?
Yes.
Why do we have emotions? And then towards the end, just a little bit of what if this is really hard?
Yeah.
Some explanations about why, and some reasons to be nice to yourself about it.
Yes, totally. Because, after talking last week about what emotions are, we gave a lot of information, but then, we thought about it before we even recorded that one of, we can talk about what emotions are all day, but it can bring up a lot of these questions of, why we have them, what good do they do?
Yeah, what's the purpose?
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to get into that a little bit today. And the first thing that emotions really do for us that we want to dive into is this idea that emotions get us ready to take action. And I talked about this some last week when I told the lion story, as I call it.
The fight or flight story.
Fight or flight, yeah,
Or
exactly.
freeze.
Fight, flight, or freeze is probably the most common example of what fear does to get us ready for action in some way. But emotions more or less guide what we do. There's this idea a little bit that once you think something or feel something, then after that you make the decision what to do. And this happens very, very quickly. But if we didn't feel our emotions, if we didn't have emotions, it would actually be really hard to make decisions.
Literally impossible to show people. I was watching, or somebody watched. All right, this might be fourth hand. I don't remember. But, memory. But if someone literally doesn't have any fear or any if they're emotionally deadened for some reason, there's medical conditions that can cause this kind of thing. It can take them 3 hours to pick a box of pasta because they have nothing.
Yeah.
To push them in a direction.
Yeah.
And so, mundane decisions become actually close to literally impossible. Mm-hmm. Which is fascinating to me.
Yep. Yeah, we probably don't think about how much our emotions really drive us to make choices and then to consequently take action. But, I don't know. I was just thinking about this as a really random example. But right now, I'm wearing super, super, super comfy clothes. I'm just wearing sweatpants, sweatshirts, and so are you, Kate.
I'm essentially in pajamas. This is why you guys can't see us.
Exactly. But something motivated me to put on comfy clothes today. I was kind of that would feel really nice to wear. I just want to be comfy today. Mm-hmm. But if I didn't have my emotions telling me what to do, who knows what would have happened or what action I would have taken or how long it would have taken. So some of this goes very quickly. And we talked about that, some in the last episode about how long it takes emotions to run their courses in our bodies and all of that. And we make some decisions very spur of the moment, very outside of our conscious awareness. But emotions get us ready to do things. So, we talked some last week about what fear does for us, but, there can be questions out there of but what about anger? Or what about
anger gets such a bad rap? It's my favorite.
Yeah, why those emotions? What do those spur us to do? And I'll talk some about anger, but then whatever I forget early about, you can fill in the blanks about this, because this is something we talk about a lot in groups, is anger is so important, because if you think about wanting a change, or I think about protests, those people are all pissed.
Yeah, any social movement, none of them have happened without anger.
Yep. You first have to be angry about something in order to want to do something to change it a lot of times. And anger also really helps keep us safe. For better or worse, if you are walking down the street and you see someone who is angry, and you might know that because they're yelling, or maybe their body posture indicates, they're puffing up a little bit, and you're like, oh God, that person's really angry. You're probably going to want to stay on the other side of the street. You're probably not going to want to approach them because they're not seeming very approachable. So anger really helps with keeping people out, I guess I would say. Like, if there's someone in your life who's unhealthy for you in some way, and you may not even realize you're doing this, but if you get big and loud and angry, because anger typically looks big and loud, not always for everyone, but that definitely keeps people at arm's length when you don't want people to get too close. It's honestly the best defense mechanism we have, I feel like.
I also feel like anger provides courage.
Yeah, totally.
Right? Like, anger often is the thing that allows, like, it's energizing, right? Anger is not a slothful emotion. No. Like, it comes with so much energy, and and a bit, hopefully not too much, but a bit of fearlessness, right? Like, anger is what makes us stand up to the bully, right? Like, anger is the thing that can get us to stand up for our rights, for our position, right? Anger can be kind of a flag that we're being wronged, or someone that we care about is an extension of us, our family, or our community, or our, people.
Yeah,
I just realized as we're talking that it's impossible to leave out the other things that emotions do as we talk about all of them.
There's going to probably be a lot of crossover. Yeah, that's probably going to happen.
Anger is important. Don't give it a bad rap.
Yeah, it's really important. And one of the things that, and I really legitimately can't recall if I said this last week or not, but it bears repeating even if I did say it. It's something, too, that we talk about in groups, and I talk about it with my clients fairly frequently, is that anger typically doesn't come alone. It typically has another emotion following right behind it or underneath the surface of it, which can be really anything, but typically is fear or hurt.
Yeah. And
that anger sometimes presents as a front to, again, keep those more tender emotions feeling safe and under wraps if it doesn't feel okay to express them in the moment. So anger serves lots of purposes, and anger motivates us to do a lot of things. Yeah, it really does. And so then moving on to thinking about sadness a little bit. Sadness gets kind of tougher, I feel like. But you were saying something about it before we started recording today about like moving away from something or moving towards. Is that relevant here?
Yeah, no, it is, because I think it's the one that almost does neither. I think like a lot of emotions. Right now, Michelle's been talking about like the 5 core emotions we were talking about last week. Oh yes, that's a good thing to mention about this.
If
you're not picking emotions out of the air, but a lot of them motivate us toward things, right? Either in aggression or in happiness. Like, I want more of that, right? So there's either to beat it up or to get more of it, or there's emotions that pull us away from things. But sadness, I think, is the one that actually is like the message of sadness in a lot of ways is to slow down.
Yeah,
it is kind of an inert, that's not quite what I mean, but right, it keeps us still in a lot of ways. I think it's one of the ones that instead of preparing us for emotion in the moment, like because of the feeling, it's sort of a slow down, rest, soothe, take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe stop moving a little bit.
I agree with all of that. And then as you were talking, it made me think too that for me at least, sadness can really motivate me towards seeking out nurturing from other people.
Yeah.
Like when I feel sad, that's when I'm like, I want a hug. Or I want to be in the company of other people who are going to be good, healthy, comforting people. For me. Yeah, that sadness really motivates me to not, it can certainly lead to isolation, but also, there's a reason why we have funerals. There's a reason for it, because when you're grieving alone, that does not feel good at all. And then when you can grieve with others, as just one example, then that can help us through the process. So I don't know, but it motivates me towards that a little bit.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I don't want to be alone. I feel sad, and I want, and again, what you were touching on, rest, soothing, some of that I can maybe do for myself, but I really want other people around me.
That makes sense.
And I think when you feel sad, which Kate, you'll probably touch on this a little bit about how our emotions communicate with others. Here comes that crossover we're talking about. But it's one of those things too that when we see someone sad, we often, I think, want to just naturally go towards them and comfort them. And so it creates connection, honestly, even if it's over something hard. And what you were saying also really leads nicely into disgust, how disgust is certainly one of those things is like, stay away. Don't go near that thing. I mean, if we didn't feel disgust, we would not live very long because we'd get ourselves into all sorts of situations that could be dangerous or situations where we could, eat something horrible for us, get sick. You see someone coughing and you're like, ugh. It really keeps us safe and encourages us to move away from the things that are not going to be good for us.
Yeah, but whether it be literal things like, my God, can you imagine if you weren't disgusted by spoiled milk? To things like what that person is doing is disgusting, right? That can help keep toxic behaviors or unsafe behaviors out of our sphere if we're like, oh no.
Yep. Yeah, so
that is not okay.
Yeah, and thinking back to fight or flight, right? It motivates us to flee. In a way, maybe not as quickly or as intensely as fear, but still giving us this message of get away from that. You don't want to consume that, or you don't want to be around that person. That's how it.
And anger is one of those motivates towards, in a sense, either towards an aggression, like towards another person, or towards our goal. Right. So I do think of anger as a towards, not away from.
Absolutely, I would agree with that. And because we touched on fear a little bit last week, I think the last thing to touch on is joy. Which is that, like you said, joy is like, I want more of that.
Yep.
And honestly, it was probably when I talked about the super silly example of picking my clothes this morning, that was probably joy of just kind of like, this will make me feel like really like calm and happy today if I'm just in my comfy clothes and you guys can't see what I'm doing, but I'm like cuddling, giving myself a hug,
cuddling her sweatshirt.
Yeah, and that's somewhere on the joy spectrum of emotions that we can feel. So yeah, when we feel joy, that gives us so many important messages about what we want to go towards, and it spurs us on to try to get just more of that thing and to take action to have really positive experiences in our lives when we feel joy about them. If we did everything and didn't feel joy while we were doing it, it would probably never motivate us to do it again.
That'd be so sad.
I know. And another random example for myself with that is I really like roller coasters. I love roller coasters. So, right, somewhere that started when I was pretty young, and now every time
you have the opportunity.
I see a theme park, I'm just kind of like, oh my gosh, I want to go ride,
roller coaster.
Yeah, I want to go be on the rides. And that's joy. That's joy motivating me to want to be like, I'm going to go do that thing. So, yeah. So our emotions, they really give us a lot of information about what action to take. That's a huge reason why we have them.
Yep, they are goads, and I don't know how to put that. Like, they goad us towards or away for things. They're guides in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
So I think we're moving into how emotions communicate to others. And I think this is great, actually, Michelle, because I think I hadn't thought about it until you were talking about it, but the move towards or away. Same. Just often
with people.
With other people.
Yeah, rather than things.
Yeah, with other things. Because, and not necessarily, but that's communicating about us. I think this is great when you're talking about the person being really angry out on the sidewalk or whatever. That person is clearly communicating to the world around them that they probably ought not to be approached.
Yeah, they're having a bad day.
That is a stay away communication, right? Or an I'm a threat communication, depending on what it is, right? And we communicate. Actually, I'm going to back up a little bit rather than going into the specific emotions yet, because how do emotions communicate to other people? Several different ways. One is facial expressions, right? That's one of the most commonly noticed. So facial expressions communicate, vocal tone and intonation and volume communicate. I'm probably... you guys can't see, but I'm leaning back in my chair a lot today, so I'm trying not to be quite as loud as I know I can be. I don't know what I'm communicating by being loud all the time. Enthusiasm. There you go. That's what I'll say. Yeah, that's totally right. So vocal tone, intonation, and volume. Also, body posture, is a big thing. And something that I won't go too far into because I'm not as aware of the science behind it, but I know it's there, is smell.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, on a level that we are not consciously aware of, we are communicating pheromonally with those around us. And so, different, that's part of how our emotions are communicating to others.
Your sweat when you're stressed is different than your sweat where it's like, oh, it's warm outside.
Yep.
Like, I'm calm, the weather's warm, so my body's doing its natural thing of sweating to cool me down, but your sweat can smell totally different based off of where you are at emotionally.
Weird, I don't know, this may sound, TMI, but with clients, I don't know if you've noticed this, I have a really strong sense of smell and always have. Crying like, oh, I'm crying a bit. That has like a certain almost non-scent. You almost can't smell it. But people who have been like ugly crying, like misery crying, that deep, long-lasting crying, it has a unique smell. Like it's absolutely different. People come in and I'm like, oh, even if you're not crying right now, I know you have been.
Wow,
like,
that's
they
interesting.
Smell
well,
like
and I don't
misery.
have a very strong sense of smell, actually. So I haven't noticed that, but I will totally take you at your word that that's legitimate.
I can, and it smells different. Tears that are just like leaking smell different.
I'm chopping onions.
Yes, or just like, or that song touched me, or that, like small emotional tears don't smell like much of anything, but emotional tears, and the snot probably too, but has a smell. Yeah. Anyway, so that's part of how these communicate to other people. So that's sort of how it communicates. And then I think that purpose, sort of going back to how I started, is that to pull people in or push people away.
Yep,
right?
Absolutely.
That is one of those two things. If I'm joyous, it's probably a pull people in. Let's share this joy. If I'm sad, kind of like how Michelle was talking about, it's like a please comfort me, please take care of me. If you think about your body posture, your vocal tones, like the stuff when you're really sad, a lot of it is, if you think on a more primal level, communicating that you're not a threat, right? You tend to be small, you tend to be collapsed in on yourself, you tend to be quiet, right? It's all very non-threatening. So it's like, I'm safe to come and cuddle. Like, God, we make so much gestures. Right, so joy is, come nearer, and sadness is come nearer, anger is stay away, disgust is certainly stay away.
Yeah, or avoid... that person.
Avoid that person. So get away from me is probably what most of what disgust is saying if it's towards a person.
Yeah.
If it could be a shared, let's all get away from that thing, depending on what the disgusting thing is. If there's a horrible smell, you'll see everyone in the area reacting the same way.
That is true. Yeah.
And I think similarly with fear.
That's what I was about to say. It feels very
dependent.
Same. If you see someone being afraid... I mean, one, that communicates a lot about the situation. That person's freaking out.
Yeah.
Oh, what are they freaking out about?
Yeah, exactly. Now maybe I should be freaking out too, right?
Yeah.
It's a bit of a join me in moving away.
Yeah. Because you do need other people. If something genuinely bad is going on.
Yeah. You want to group up.
The fear is warranted. Yeah, exactly. You want to group up. You want to...
Safety in numbers.
Exactly. School of fish.
Yes.
That's the whole idea. So, yeah, I mean, fear can communicate... Yeah, a lot of things.
Yeah, depending. I think that's very environmentally influenced.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'd say, am I missing anything that it talks about?
I touched on all of the 5 emotions, so I think you're doing good there. The other thing that I was thinking of when you were talking, which I legitimately can't remember the name, so maybe you can remember the name.
Okay.
But what you were talking about at the beginning of how our tone of voice, our body language, how all that's communicated. There was a word for that, and I can't remember it at all. Yeah, nonverbal. There was something else too, and I can't remember. And I can't remember also the exact number, but something about how like 80%. Okay, we must be right because we both said it at the same time.
Yeah, it's not what
it's
we
not
say.
About your words, and pretty much everything else that we're doing, whether we're consciously aware of it or not, is indicating our emotional state.
And we're doing it whether we like it or not, by the way. That is another point where it talks about on here, and it's super true. I think that goes back to like base minimum. You smell different whether you know it or not, right? Like we are always communicating.
And we're always picking up on other people's body language. We're always reading other people and making snap judgments, and a lot of what they're communicating to us is about their emotional state, whether they know it or not.
So not the smell, because it's photographs, and I don't know. I think this touches on it. If nothing else, it's just really cool, and I thought about it. They did a study where they flashed, the study participants were shown faces of people, but like fast enough that their conscious mind was not even really aware that there'd been a thing to see. Like, fractions of seconds. And we have a startlingly good ability to be able to make judgments about the people we just saw. In, like, fractions of seconds.
I buy it.
That we didn't even know we saw a face. Like, what were some of the things? Amusingly enough, criminality was one that we're actually pretty good at. And, like, how gregarious, how outgoing, how friendly a person is. I can't remember, there was like something else, competence or leadership, something like that. Anyway, there were a few different ones, and some were better at than others, but realistically, that whole first impressions thing is serious. And we're communicating about ourselves with our faces, with our bodies, with our voices all the time, and we're also picking up on others. So
yeah, I mean, there's a reason why if you go into a room full of people you don't know, there are going to be some people that you probably feel more comfortable with, that you may gravitate towards, and then some people that you're like, they can stay over there and I'm good with that. But like, I literally just had this image cut to me, which is so silly, but like, if we were walking through the world, everybody, with completely neutral facial expressions at all times, we would probably not be able to form any kind of social connections
bonds
with
would be
people,
really hard.
because we wouldn't have those emotional signals that are really important for indicating, do I go towards this person or away, as you've been talking about. So, emotions are huge for that with communicating to other people. They do a lot of that. And building off of that, our emotions communicate to ourselves. So this is something that, I believe we talked about this with our Wise Mind episode, like way long ago, of kind of that idea of just like being able to tune into our bodies a little bit.
Okay.
And maybe we've touched on it too throughout like our mindfulness episodes, but it's one of those things where our emotions live in our bodies. Our emotions live in our nervous system. That's where our signals come from, more or less, is how our body is reacting physically to something gives us a lot of information. And sometimes our bodies react physically before we're consciously aware of something, like as we were just talking about, the stress sweat. You know, you may be sitting there for like a job interview, and unfortunately, like, your body is doing its thing, feeling that emotion, and your body is communicating to you, like, basically, hey, we're nervous about this, and this is a big deal, and I'm helping you get ready. You know, with me being a dancer for a long time, it was one of those things where before we would go on stage for performance, it was, this thing where being nervous was always good. The way that our bodies were reacting, it's like, okay, my body's getting me prepped, and we all had to kind of view it that way.
Interesting.
More or less, to be like, nerves are good, because otherwise what our body maybe would want to...
It's more sluggish, less on point, less energized.
Yeah, it's like, run away. Like, you know, flee. Don't do this performance. This is overwhelming because I'm nervous. But we'd have to kind of mind hack ourselves a little bit to be like, know what our body is telling us is a good thing. So when it's... Oh, yeah, go for it.
Just because I think you mentioned it last time, was the whole, like, people who may have come from families where emotions weren't talked about.
Yes, we did talk about that.
Or where they, like, were subsumed a lot. I think that one of the other... You might be about to get to this. I always
you're all
say
good.
Her stuff first. But when you start to pay attention to emotions, if you haven't previously... that can be a whole nother way that they communicate. Like, if you're kind of in your emotions anyway and kind of aware of them all the time, this might seem kind of, well, duh to you or obvious. But for people who are kind of tuned out from their emotions, when they first start paying attention or tuning in, you'd be like, oh my God! Like, this is giving me so much information about myself and the world and, like, what I do or don't want, what I'm afraid of, what I want to move towards or away from, right? There's that whole idea again that maybe you've been cut off from that stream of information for yourself. And
no, that's a great point, because the reality is that even if whether it's really quiet or whether it's really loud, we all have intuition of some kind. We all have gut feelings. We all have that voice in the back of our head. We have that. We just have to tune into it and listen to it. And as you were just talking about, if you've grown up in an environment where listening to that gut feeling was invalidated or not safe to do,
or shamed or shut down.
Yeah, exactly. Then it's going to be tough to let your emotions actually communicate to you and allow yourself to have them. But the thing we're going to be getting into a lot more over the coming weeks as we talk about emotional regulation is that, I mean, it's about figuring out how to be in touch with your emotions, and then it's also figuring out, you know, how you can make wise mind choices about what you want to do with those emotions.
Yeah, because we said, like, feelings, not facts, right? So they are information bringers.
Yeah.
But you do still have to go through a vetting process of the information.
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
Listen to the information, but don't just immediately take it at face value and run with it.
Right.
Also, I have no idea how good the microphone is, so I just want to say, if you're hearing banging,
I was going to say,
that is my husband putting away the dishes. And so, good job, him. Doing the dishes. We always make up complaints about people not doing them. He's doing them.
Yep,
but
he's doing
putting
the
away
dishes.
silverware is loud, even in another room.
Yep.
If it's not the cat, it's something else.
Yeah, something else today. We don't have the cats in the room with us for once. I was trying to think if there was anything else I wanted to say about that or anything else you want to add on. But yeah, I mean, our emotions just, when we listen to them, they guide us. Yeah. And we just get to decide whether we want to, again, go with what they're suggesting or maybe make a different choice or whatever it is. But yeah, our emotions give us lots of information. And because I was doing this with the last one, now I'm trying to imagine, what if we had a world where, again, like, we didn't get emotional? I mean, I think it is kind of what you're saying. You'd be staring at the pasta for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Trying to make a choice.
Yep.
It wouldn't be communicating to you about choose this, not that. Because I think that idea that we were talking about more at the beginning of what we like.
Yeah.
That's very much our emotions communicating to ourselves, like, pick this thing, not that thing.
Yeah, and similar are super important. Like, I mean, so like and dislike, like joy or disgust is, like, good and important and helps us make decisions. But, like, fear is so important because you just die. You just die.
Yeah, you would.
Being actually, people like to call someone fearless as a compliment. It'd be like a death sentence. Being actually fearless, you just walk in front of cars and shit. Like, it's bad plans. Bad plans. Give your emotions a big thumbs up, even if they're the uncomfortable ones. They serve a purpose.
Yep, they're telling you to not walk in front of that car. Yep,
Right.
Exactly. So, yeah, they do. They tell us a lot about what we want to choose in life. And, just, I guess they tell us a lot about, I don't know, I was going to say, like, our personalities, too. But, yeah, just kind of, likes, dislikes. Sort of the same thing I just said, just repeating it.
All right. So next, we're going to talk a little bit about what makes it hard to regulate your emotions.
Yeah. You know what they are, why we have them a little bit, but
that doesn't
make it easy.
You mean, Michelle, that doesn't instantly allow us to completely regulate them at all times?
Oh, I wish.
Nope. My first thought is just with all of these, I'm gonna talk about 3 reasons, and Michelle's gonna talk about 3 reasons. But, like, be kind to yourself, please.
Yeah. Maybe we can actually say at the end, I just thought about this and totally interrupted you, but maybe at the end, once we get through all of these, maybe you and I can each say what gets in our way the most to just really validate that, you know,
we're human.
This comes up for everyone.
Yes. So be kind, because there are a lot of reasons that this is difficult, and no one is perfect at doing this. But here are some things that specifically can make it difficult, and we're going to talk maybe a little bit about either what you can or can't do about it and stuff like that. So the first one is just biology. On a DBT level, God, I keep wanting to lean into the microphone. Stop it. On a DBT level, later in emotion regulation. Please is emotion regulation.
Yeah, please is coming up soon. Fairly soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a skill called please where we will talk about this way more in depth. So that's a little bit of a coming soon to DBT and me. But also, I think we talked about this a little bit when I was talking about neurobiology. The limbic system is the part of the brain that, you know, is responsible for all of our of any sort, whether that's excitement or terror or anything in between. And some people are just born with a more active limbic system. That is just a thing. Some people develop a more active limbic system by being raised in abusive and traumatic households.
Yeah.
And there are a number of different reasons that can literally alter the structure of our brain, change our biology in such a way that it makes our emotions bigger, stronger, harder to regulate. with some of the smaller things that aren't just like the baseline of how your brain is functioning, we'll talk about that with the please skill in a week or 3, somewhere in there. But with regards to the, the limbic system or other things, that's the place to just be really kind to yourself. And to develop strategies that acknowledge that. Like, hey, I do tend to feel things more strongly than other people, so maybe that gives me a thing to weigh in when I'm deciding how factual my emotional state is or how in line with reality it is, right? It's information to have, both to be kind to yourself and to, balance your world around once you know it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, to a certain degree or another, our bodies do what they do.
Yeah. Yep. So kindness. The next one is lack of skill. So you don't know how to do it. We haven't gotten to it yet. So literally at this point, we haven't even tried to teach you.
Yeah. You're in the right place though to learn.
Yes.
That's what we're here to do, is teach you skills.
And so that I would say that just be patient with yourself there, right? If you're on this DBT journey and you're trying to gain these specific skills, then just be patient and let yourself accumulate them. Let yourself fail at them a lot because it's new and it's difficult and you're not going to be perfect to start with. You're probably going to be subpar to start with, and that's okay. That's how humans start and learn. But also keep track of what skills you already have. So if you're not like start to finishing this, podcast, or if you have other therapeutic skills that have nothing to do with DBT, or hell, if you have survived to this point in your life, I guarantee you have skills. You may never have thought of it in that terminology, but you have some. So when you think that you don't have them, maybe you're right, but also maybe you're not giving yourself credit. So trying to engage in some sort of exercise where maybe you look at the skills you already have and find some way to document them in a place that you can turn to when you're really flooded. That can be really helpful. And the next thing, and this one might sound a little bit weird, is reinforcement of emotional behavior. So something in your environment is reinforcing you when you are acting highly emotional. So to put this in terms that don't make some people feel bad about themselves, but think about toddlers.
That's what I was thinking of.
Right? And first of all, no shade being thrown at parents of toddlers.
It's a tough job.
I had a 3-year-old living with me for a while. Oh, yes, difficult. So not trying to throw shade, but we've all certainly seen it or had it happen with ourselves where a kid is throwing a tantrum and you just can't even anymore, and so you give the kid the thing, whatever the thing is. Well, unfortunately, that particular action in that particular moment serves to reinforce that child throwing a tantrum, right? Because they're like, aha, all I had to do was be loud enough and I got the thing, right? And their brain records that in some fashion. Now, one time doing that, you're not going to turn your child into a spoiled brat, don't worry about it. But that's the kind of thing. So, but translate that into your adult life, right? Maybe your partner is so far out of emotion mind that in order to get them to notice that you have emotions at all, you have to throw a tantrum. Maybe not, maybe literally, but that idea, right? You don't have your emotions validated or recognized in your environment until they're huge, right? That can be one way. So I think we talked too long if I can't with all the different examples, but basically there are a lot of different ways that things in your environment maybe don't give you what you need or want or are looking for until you go kind of over the top emotionally. And that can make it hard to back down, even if you don't like being in that huge emotional space, because generally that's not comfortable. When you start backing off, you might notice that your environment is giving you less of what you need or want, and that's going to be a whole nother problem to navigate. So that one is mostly a lot of validation. If you're able to notice that about your environment, you're already getting a leg up on being able to navigate it. If you just go, my partner's my parent, my boss, my roommate, my sister, whatever. They are totally reinforcing my emotional breakdowns. So how can I try and navigate that? Just the awareness is a big thumbs up.
Yeah, it definitely is. And the next one is moodiness. So I feel like it can go hand in hand a little bit with the last one. But basically this is just the idea that we're not always in our wise minds. And so if you're more in your emotion mind in particular, you're going to get the I don't wanna. And, it's going to put you in a position where it's going to be harder to regulate your emotions if you're in emotion mind, which makes sense. And sometimes it's one of those things where we simply, learning these skills and practicing these skills and implementing these skills takes a lot of time and effort.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where, like Kate talked a moment ago, maybe you just don't have the skills, but even when you do get the skills, then it's about wanting to use them and remembering to and all this stuff. And depending on what mood you're in, all of that may make that more challenging. Yeah. You may be in a place of willfulness, which is a term we get to way far down the line, of just like digging in your heels and being like, yeah, I know I could do my DBT skills, or I just, whatever. Like, I don't want to today. And we just, in a way, are choosing to not regulate our emotions. And again, I want to give some validation there, because it's one of those things where, like, we're never perfect 100% of the time. And I think especially as adults, there can just be those times where it's like, I know I could do the adulting thing. Yes, I know I could do the dishes before I go to bed, but whatever. I don't want to. Like,
yeah, I do get into the place of, like, I don't want to use my skills. Mm-hmm. Like, that has been a thing, especially looking back. Mm-hmm. Like, when I mentioned this in the first episode, when I went through DBT at 19 as a client/patient, whatever, and I was doing a lot of self-harming. Like, there were totally times where I can't say anything, but I actively chose to self-harm instead of using skills.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was like, no, fuck it.
I don't want to do it anymore. Yeah. I want to do the thing that's familiar. I want to do the thing that I know how it works. That's easier, right? Like, and I super calling myself out so that y'all feel normal. I have, in almost those exact words, thought to myself, no, I don't want to use my skills.
Yep. I'm not going to do it. I'm just not in the mood. I don't feel like it. Yep. So. That's exactly what we're talking about there. The next one is emotional overload. So there are times and situations where your emotions may go from 0 to 60. And when we're in a state of emotional overload...
On a scale of 10. No.
Yeah, right. There you go. 60 on a 1 through 10 scale.
Yeah, right.
High.
Flooded.
Really high. Yeah, being flooded, being completely overwhelmed so that you're just in a position where you're you get into survival mode. Like, I think about when I was in a car accident that was about 1.5 years ago now, but I rear-ended someone. And of course, my body got flooded. Yep. I was literally shaking, feeling so much fear, and also, like, a little later down the line, but pissed off at myself because the accident was completely my fault. But I was so overloaded. And the thing is, which we touched on some last week with the lion story, when we're emotionally overloaded, we're not thinking. Like, our reasonable mind goes offline.
Yep.
It really does. And so remembering to use skills really takes effort. And it's going to be really hard to do if you're emotionally overloaded when something really, really big happens. That's going to make it hard to regulate your emotions because the emotion is humongous. So that's something too. And there are DBT skills for this that we'll get to down the line of basically when DBT calls it, which I don't necessarily really like this term, but your skills breakdown point.
No, I hate that term.
That's what DBT calls it. But anyways, like when you get to that state of mind where you are completely flooded, what can you do to, in a way, bring yourself down to then bring your reasonable mind back online and start making
more complex
good decisions. Yeah, exactly. But emotional overload is a real thing that makes it hard to regulate your emotions and keep them, I guess one could say, at a more of a wise mind level.
Accessible to our thinking brain?
Yes, exactly. And then the very last thing, which is more or less a sneak preview for the next episode we're going to record, is that one of the things that makes it hard to regulate our emotions is what DBT calls emotion myths. Basically, you've been receiving messages about emotions from the time you were born.
Yep.
What emotions are good, quote unquote. What emotions are bad, quote unquote. When you feel an emotion, what you do with it. Like, I was actually thinking of this when you were talking about lack of skill.
Oh, yeah.
If you get to be the age of, 5?
Yeah.
God, I hope your parents have taught you some skills to regulate your emotions, because as you touched on too, like 2, 3, 4-year-olds, they really need those. But
to healthily regulate your emotions. Can we put that term in front?
Yes, thank you. Yeah. That's a very important disclaimer. Yeah, because you may have learned some ways to handle your emotions that were completely unhealthy.
Yeah.
And just involved you shitting on yourself, a lot of shame, shutting down.
Yeah.
And now we want to teach you other ways. So, but with all of that, you get these messages about emotions and what to do with them, if it's okay to feel them or not okay to feel them. And DBT calls these myths, which I think is important because 99% of the time, what you learned about emotions maybe was not very accurate at all. And it's been perhaps guiding you to make certain decisions that don't actually serve you, or they make it hard to regulate your emotions. So next week, what we're going to do is we're going to read through, I think it's 20 different myths.
Oh, no, that's an other. We could pick our own. We could make our own up.
We could make our own up. At least 20 myths about emotions, and we're basically going to be debunking them. Yep. So it's going to go, obviously, fairly quickly. Otherwise, that episode will be forever. But it is one of those things that we carry these messages with us, and when we can start debunking them a little bit, it can change our view of emotions. Yeah, and move forward, and then it frees us up to figure out, again, new ways of what we want to do with our emotions when we have them. So, yeah. And with homework for this week, I'm going to read again, we're getting to number 6 next week. I'm going to read the 5 back to you that we just talked about real briefly about what makes it hard to regulate your emotions. And I would say for homework, I would encourage you to take some time to think about which one you maybe struggle with the most. And Kate and I are actually going to share this too before we wrap up the episode of which one we struggle with the most. But think about it. Which one do you struggle with the most? If journaling is your jam, journaling's my jam. It's not everyone's jam, which is totally fine. But if it is your jam, maybe you can take an extra step to spend some time journaling about it. Why you think that one is the toughest for you, what's contributed to that being a challenge. So I'm going to read back over, again, I'm going to leave off emotion myths because we're getting to that next week, but I'm going to read over the other 5, which are biology, lack of skill, reinforcement of emotional behavior, moodiness, and emotional overload. So rewind that if you need it again.
No, right.
But we're each going to talk about the one that we struggle with the most. Do you feel like you have one off the top of your head, or do you want me to go for it? You go
first, because I have 4, and I probably should pick one.
Yeah, 4 out of the 5.
I know, it is.
I mean, I'm kind of torn between 2. I'm torn a little bit between biology and moodiness. So, biology, which we're going to get to with the plea skills, but I do not a very great job of regulating my emotions when I am hungry, when I am tired, if my internal, or when I'm in pain, or whatever it may be. When my physiology, my biology is off kilter, my emotions tend to go with it. So that's something that I notice for myself. And with the moodiness, I think for myself, it doesn't look necessarily exactly how I was talking about it. But for me, sometimes with moodiness, I just get in a mood where, I guess it falls in line with the I don't wanna. Mm-hmm. But I just want to be by myself. I don't want to deal with the thing. I guess that actually is really in line with it in a way. I think about it as, I'm not necessarily consciously choosing this, but I just want to avoid.
Yeah.
That can show up for me sometimes, and I would say that falls under moodiness. I don't want to think about my emotions. I don't want to go talk to the people I need to talk to resolve an issue. I just want to
numb out, or
a little bit. Just go watch a show. Just go read. And
avoidant.
Yeah, that I would say is me being moody.
What do I want to do?
You can do it, Kate.
I know. So I actually think, I don't know, I'm going to go with somewhere between moodiness and emotional overload, which I actually think is influenced by biology, because I think I might be one of those people with quite a limbic system going on for various sundry reasons. But, I don't know. I have certainly in my life had a lot of moments of that total emotional overload. And for me, that comes with a sense that as irrational as it sounds, out of the moment, that this emotion is never going to end. It just seems permanent and huge and unconquerable.
Yeah.
And so that certainly is probably the one where I've struggled the most to regulate them, is because my thinking at the time is, woohoo! like totally off kilter. And so there's this sense of futility in the face of the emotion. Like, nothing to do but flop over and just let it run roughshod over me. So that's probably one of my bigger struggles, I would say.
Yep. So think about it for yourself. Think about which of those 5 you maybe struggle with the most, and you can certainly be like us and pick 2. Because it's really hard to pick just one, and there is a lot of overlap between them. So, yeah. And send us any emails that you guys have, especially with this emotions stuff. If you have questions about emotions that we didn't address in this episode or the last one, or scenarios in your life that are proving to be challenging for you, we'd love to help you out. So the email is dbtandmepodcast@gmail.com.
Woohoo. Are we moving on to closing moments?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
I want a closing moment.
I know, I'm making this one up off the top of my head. I know. The chair's going to creak. We've learned this. You just have to get in the creaky position, whatever makes you happy.
I'm good. I'm ready.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. So, to begin with, find a comfortable position, sitting, standing, laying down, whatever seems best for you in the moment. And if you're comfortable doing so, close your eyes. As usual, we're going to start by just tuning into our breath. We don't have to breathe any more slowly or any more deeply than you are naturally. It's just about paying attention, following the breath down into the lungs, letting it welcome you into your body and into the present moment. When you've really settled in and you feel present and aware, I want you to take a moment and check in with your feelings. What emotional state are you in right now? Make room for however many different emotions show up when you ask the question. Give it a minute for new ones to arise. Maybe stuff from your day before you were listening decides to show up now that you're paying attention. And just let those emotions become present, become realized in your body and in your mind right now. Once you feel like you have them in your body and in your mind, take a moment to turn towards gratitude for those emotions. See if you can puzzle out, what are they telling you to move towards or away from? And why? Does it bring up information that surprises you? Does it push you in a direction that you weren't expecting? Or maybe this is exactly what you thought it would be. Either way, just take this moment to appreciate all of the information that these emotions are giving to you. All of the things they're trying to communicate, and all of the directions they're trying to help you go. Remember, of course, that you have the choice. Just because your emotions are urging you toward or away from something else doesn't mean you have to do it. But even if you choose to act contrary to your emotional state, take a moment to give thanks for the information that it's giving you. Really take a second to honor that these emotions are helping you learn about yourself, learn about those around you, learn about and interact with your environment. Take a moment to just enjoy the awareness of all of these different emotional states that might show up right now. None good, none bad, all just informational. all just here to help guide you. When you feel like you've listened to all of them and sorted them out, allow yourself to let go of them and start to come back into your body, still holding on to that sense of gratitude and thankfulness, and remembering that you always have this option to tune in, to see what you're feeling and what those feelings say. Now, if you're ready, take 2 or 3 slow, deep breaths. And as you're doing so, you might roll your wrists or ankles, roll your neck, just coming back into your body, out of the immediate emotional states, and back into the room when you're ready to open your eyes. Thanks so much, everybody.
All right, see you next week. To learn more about us and the DBT skills we're teaching each week, join our Facebook group. Simply log in to your Facebook profile and search for DBT and Me Podcast.